was he had spent 25 years proving to the world that there was a GlycoCalyx because nobody knew it was there until he got those images. In fact, he was mocked pretty severely at some point. A lot of people thought he was crazy to say that there was this protective barrier on the endothelium, just because you never knew about it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until he got all those images and proved that it was really there that this big paradigm shift, if you will, started. And so Hans, through all those years, he had to figure out, first of all, he had to prove that it was there. Then he had to figure out what's its physiological function. In other words, why did God put that protective coating on the endothelium? And what does it do? And then what happens when it breaks down? And so about the time I joined him, he'd been successful in creating the first Glycocheck device. And I actually sought him out because I had actually developed my first therapeutic or nutraceutical. And first of all, I wanted to see if it really worked. The product I was working on, so I wanted to get measured, and then I wanted to see if he could actually measure and detect an improvement. And so both those things happened. And when I explained to Hans what I was doing, he got really emotional with me. And what he told me is, he goes, Bob, I've spent my whole career proving to the world that the GlycoCalyx is real. And then I created the Glycocheck, and I can go into the ICU and I could measure people, and I could tell the people that are going to live and die based on how thick their GlycoCalyx was. And then he said, everybody always asked me the same question. And that question was, so what do we do about it? And this is when he got emotional. He said, I always figured at some point in time, somebody had come along and they'd figure out how to repair the GlycoCalyx, but I always figured it would be a drug. He said, I never imagined that you could take natural compounds and create a therapeutic that does what you're trying to accomplish. And so that's when we decided to partner. And then, working together, we've been able to publish, over 125 studies. We took the long path that most people would never do, in that we went out and we sold the Glycocheck at full price to academic research hospitals. So I think we're in well over 200 academic research hospitals. And the other thing that we wanted to do is we wanted to prove our hypothesis that when the GlycoCalyx breaks down, it's the root of the inflammation that begins in the body and is the beginning of almost every condition and disease that progresses in the body. And so, it took us, we've been doing that for about 15 years now. And it was a long journey, but the most exciting part for us is every one of our hypotheses have proven to be true, in that we've proven time and time again on multiple conditions and diseases that when one thing breaks down, and that's the GlycoCalyx, it leads to this spiral of events that happen. And so I was curious about, when I met you, how you would reflect to that, being a hardcore guy that's been in the industry forever. So what's
Yeah.
your thought?
So first of all, Bob, I love that story. I do. And I not only acknowledge, but I commend you and Hans both for your, as you put it, the entrepreneurial spirit. And the process, the road that you've been on is not meant for the faint of heart. Another quote comes to mind is, those who say it can't be done are generally passed by others doing it. And you've defined that hype curve. You've defined the ability of how to get from point A to point B very effectively. And your experience and your example is reflective of that. So I want to thank you for that. And I also want to mention one thing. When after I had gone through my experience that I told you about, I then you may recall this, but a couple weeks after I went to London, where
Right, I
I'm
remember.
yeah, part of a large vascular community, and I brought some of the images that you had shared with me. And you got to understand, this is a community of vascular surgeons that I'm working with, and that I'm very tight knit. It's a very tight knit group. And I remember I'm sharing them some of those images, and they're not used to seeing blood running through the vessels, because you think about it, the way they look at blood vessels is they inject a contrast agent, which obstructs the view of the vessel. It points out anomalies. So if you have atherosclerosis, if you have a narrowing or a restriction or a stenosis, it points that out, but they never think about the vascular anatomy. So when I showed this to them, they were kind of put back because they said, this is nothing we learned in school. These are the world's leaders in vascular, vascular anatomy and vascular surgery and interventional medicine. And the first thing was like, man, this Bob Mitchell is starting to smoke something funny, because he's starting to look at what we've known forever, and he's changing the dynamics of it. Now, you fast forward a couple of years that I've been kind of educating them on the microvascular system, and I've been educating them on the GlycoCalyx and its health. It's fascinating to see a pivot, and that's been a result of your experience, Bob. That you, again, perseverance is the key to entrepreneurship. Not everyone has that ability that you and Hans had to stick to it when everyone's telling you can't do it. Well, you guys sure showed that you can. So I think on the other aspect that you're talking about is this merge of this East versus West approach to medicine. And that's just a broad category to discuss it, because a lot of Eastern medicine is reflective on some of the nutraceutical approaches. I recall my first time in China, and where we were using toxic agents to anesthetize the patients, and they were using herbal medicine. And I thought, how shameful and how back they are, how we need to get them above and beyond where they are to get them to where we need to be. In reality, they were leaps and bounds ahead of what we were doing in Western medicine. What you've effectively done here, and which is so beautiful about this, not only what's being done in the GlycoCalyx Research Institute that you formed, it's the combination of these two worlds together, kind of an East versus West, to do what is best for the patient. And so, again, I just acknowledge and commend you and Hans for the work that you've done, and your stick-to-itiveness and your perseverance, because it's finally now the world, even this world of vascular that I've been part of my whole life and career, they're starting to think, well, maybe I didn't really understand how the real world was. So thanks to your efforts, I think we're starting to get this merger of two worlds together, micro versus macro.
Right. And when I first started out, I thought the first product I developed was called arteriocell. I was thinking the large arteries, only the 1%, because I thought that's what the issue was. Well, that is the issue, but that issue doesn't happen until 20 or 30 years or fairly late in life, after you've done all the things that you've done. And so the thing that opened my eyes when I started working with Hans was the other 99% that I hadn't even considered, which is the whole capillary network, which is, it's over 60,000 miles long. It's about 7,000 square feet. It's almost unfathomable to think that I've got that much surface area in my body where blood flows, and and the magnificence of the creation of our human body. It's just, I'm always in awe when I think about it. And so I guess just a couple of last questions for you. So I'm just curious, what motivated you to join us when I contacted you late last summer, again after we'd been talking together, and I'm just curious why you would what motivated you to, at this stage in your life, to join forces with us to, I guess, bring this technology to the world.
That's a great question. And you asked my wife, and she always says, every time I say that I'm retiring, she kind of scratches her head and says, yeah, right. As I think about this, as I think about the career that I've been fortunate to be part of, I've always considered myself on the cutting edge of innovation. And I've always tried to maintain an open mind. I've always tried to maintain an attitude of, if you think you've discovered it, just wait until you wake up tomorrow. And that's what drew me to you is, Bob, I really thought that I had vascular anatomy figured out. I'm not an MD by training, but people position me where I'm educating MDs and I'm talking to them about my opinion about the evolution of vascular and vascular anatomy. And so you disrupted my entire perspective on life. And so why did I get engaged? It's because number one, I think that this represents the next innovation in vascular health. And and this is also predictive of overall health. And so I feel like at this stage in my life and in my career, it's where we can impact more patients and where we can help, save, not only improve lives, but we can save lives through doing this. And so that's what drove me more than anything else, is to be part of that wave, that next wave of innovation.
Okay, well, it's really exciting. Thanks for sharing that because, um, I honestly feel like what we've been creating is, I call it a movement. And the movement is a whole paradigm shift away from just the concept that you've been talking about with your vascular surgeons and everybody. Everybody viewed the world from one perspective. And, now as we open up the view, we're looking at the forest from a whole different angle. And I think it opens up all kinds of new frontiers. And the thing that's always struck me since I got involved in this over the last 15 years is I've always, in fact, it's what got me on this in the first place. And it was a personal experience I had 15 years ago. And I had to think to myself, oh my gosh, this is the best medical technology has to offer. And they can't tell me why I have that angina. And so, you know, it drove me to basically want to find out for myself what I needed to do to fix me. But then it also came to my mind, if this is happening to me, this is happening to millions of other people. And then as I got into this, it shocked me as I looked at the hundreds of millions of dollars that have been invested in all of these different diseases. So if you look at cardiovascular disease, it's still the largest killer of, most people will die from cardiovascular disease. And so why after all these hundreds of millions of dollars, why are our morbidity and our mortality rates and the rates that we're getting this disease, the numbers aren't getting better, they're getting worse. And so the thing that excites me, and I think that's probably what excites you, is we have the ability to really change potentially the trajectory of world health when we look at major things that impact people's health. And that's cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, diabetes. The biggest fear that our generation has is that we'll lose our senses and our mind, our neurological health. That's the last thing we want to be able to do. And so, the cool thing is the GlycoCalyx and the microvascular system is hooked or linked to all of these different things. So I guess I guess we pretty much used up our time today together, but maybe you could just give us your parting thought of where you see our company and what the future holds and what you think we will be able to do with this now that we've been fortunate in that we've been able to put a really solid team around us to help take what Hans and I have been working on and now bring it to the world and share this movement.
Yeah, well, first, again, thank you for this opportunity to share my thoughts. And I find it fascinating, Bob, that we live in a world, and from a healthcare perspective, that there are certain catchphrases or there are certain cliches out there. For example, personalized medicine, precision medicine is one of those things out there where a lot of companies are touting that. Now, what I see that you have done and you've identified here is how do you really define that you have personalized medicine? And the way that is found, in my estimation, is an appropriate diagnosis of each specific patient's, underlying causes, their comorbidities, their predispositions, their genetics, whatever it may be. Once you have an understanding of that patient's, comorbidities, you then apply again the therapeutic of the side of that. And then the key that we have is the diagnosis, the therapeutic, and then the measurement. So It's showing effectiveness and just saying, hey, take this pill and you will feel better, or take this pill and you'll grow hair, or take this pill and do whatever. The difference in what we've established here at this company is an ability to not only identify the underlying issues for each specific patient, but to measure the performance of each patient. And I think that's what differentiates this company from other companies. And so, where do I see the future? As we look at catchphrases not only of personalized medicine, but inflammation, of oxidative stress, and the list goes on and on. How do we identify that? But more importantly, how do we measure efficacy? How do we measure performance? And so where I see this company fitting in that mix is it's almost a say what we mean what we say, do what we say. And I think that's the difference behind it. Instead of just casting out their broad statements that, hey, take this and you'll feel better, you may have a placebo effect. We actually measure performance through our measurement opportunity with the GlycoCheck. So I'm thrilled to be part of it. I think the wave is just beginning. And I think we're only beginning to innovate on this and understand what this represents. So we're right at the beginning age of a huge wave in front of us.
Right. And I'll just conclude by saying one thing. I think if you look at where we are at as a country right now, with some of the changes that have happened with new leadership coming in, I think the opportunities for what we do have never been greater. For example, President Trump, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but in his first presidency, he signed an executive order. It was the right to try, because there were a lot of people that had what were considered to be terminal illnesses. And then, government would step in and say, no, you can't try it. And his approach was, well, if you say they're going to die anyway, what do you care if they try? And if it works, then they're better off. But then the whole idea of, RFK and Make America Healthy Again, it's really what we do is right in the heart of that whole thing, because all the diseases that he talked about that are going to bankrupt us as a country, those are all conditions that we're focused on with the GlycoCheck and with ReVAsca. And so for us, I see it's really exciting moving forward. And the thing that's most exciting to me was, when I had my experience 15 years ago, I really walked away from that meeting with that cardiologist thinking, geez, Bob, it's too late. You screwed up. You should have lived a lot healthier life. You should have exercised a lot more. You shouldn't have eaten all those prime rib dinners. And so it really kind of depressed me for a while, but then I decided it wasn't too late. And that's what drove me on this journey, if you want to think of it that way. And I can't tell you the number of people I've talked to over the last 15 years that they ask me, is it too late? Because they're really asking somebody to reach out and help them. And I've come to believe most of the time it's not too late. If we do certain things and change certain behaviors, we can change that trajectory. And we still have some control over our ultimate destiny. And that's the thing that drives me every day, is to help educate people that it's not too late. You can still make the changes that you need to. And, I don't remember if you remember, there was an advertisement, it was for one, I think Office Max or somebody, and they had this little thing, and you'd hit it, and it was the easy button. And I don't know if you remember that, but the thing I remember was when I started down this path, I thought, I need to create the easy button, because a lot of people aren't going to make all the lifestyle changes. They're not going to exercise 50 minutes a day. They're not going to do all those things. And so that's what I'm excited about. And I'm so happy that you've chosen to join us and provide your leadership, and I guess join us with the scars on your back that you've earned over the years to help us be successful and bring these products to the world. So thank you very much for your time today.
Well, thank you, Bob. It's an honor to be here. I look forward to the future. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to The Future of Vascular Health. Healthy vessels, healthy future. If you're ready to take charge of your health, it's time to check out ReVAsca. This powerful supplement is designed to protect your GlycoCalyx, the microscopic layer that keeps your blood vessels healthy and strong. ReVAsca can help support your heart health, improve circulation, and even reduce high blood pressure. It's also great for boosting brain function, keeping your kidneys healthy, and preventing vascular complications before they start. Think of it as a way to keep your body running smoothly so you can live longer, feel sharper, and stay active. Don't wait. Take the first step toward better health today. Visit GlycoCalyx.com to learn more about ReVAsca and how it can help you protect your future.